Today on the Commanders Report, we have a loaded edition of Commanders news and rumors after Washington took a big L versus the Dallas Cowboys here in Week 7. First up, some huge injury updates on guys like Jayden Daniels and Dorance Armstrong after their injuries yesterday afternoon. Then I'm going to get into 8 changes that I believe the Washington Commanders must make on defense for even a slight chance of fixing this defense this year. And then I've got some more Week 7 film takeaways to share with you guys while we put a little bit of a bow on Week 7 as we look forward to Week 8 versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, kick off our coverage this week here on the Commanders Report by giving me a yes or a no down there in the comments section. Have you lost all faith in this year's Commanders team, or do you think there's still hope for this team to turn it around? Simply give me a yes or a no down there in the comments section. Now, first, some injury updates to share with you guys. Unfortunately, they're not fantastic news. Now, we'll start with the better news of the day here, which surrounds Jayden Daniels, all right, where it could be a lot worse. Coach Quinn took the podium just moments ago saying that the injury that he suffered to his hamstring yesterday versus the Cowboys is not a long-term injury, but he is questionable to play this week versus the Kansas City Chiefs on Monday Night Football on the road. All right. So as far as I'm concerned, guys, especially with it feels like this season on the line over the next month or so, with you got to, put together at least a few wins over the next few weeks to even give yourself a chance to go on a run down the stretch. The sooner you can get Jayden Daniels back in the lineup, the better. Jayden is still a top 10 level quarterback. I can't say he necessarily played like it yesterday. There were some timing issues, some chemistry stuff that went wrong yesterday between him and his receivers that frankly he hasn't had a ton of time to work with, guys like Robbie Chosen and others. But, it just wasn't the best day at the office for Jayden, but he undeniably gives you the best chance to go on a run. Like the best chance that the Commanders have on going on a run heading into, January and having a chance to play come playoff time is Jayden gets hot and he plays, phenomenally when he gets back from this hamstring injury. And the sooner you can get him back for the possibility of that, the better. This goes for guys like Deebo Samuel and Terry McLaurin and some of the other offensive pieces that you're missing as well. But with that said, I do have some level of confidence in Mariota. If you can put together a good offensive game plan around Mariota, use Mariota's legs, he still can run. If you can get the run game going, if you can get that defense to turn it around, we're going to talk about some of the ways that we can try to fix this defense here coming up later in the show. If he can do those things and give Mariota a supporting cast, he's shown that he can be a more than serviceable starting quarterback in this offense and for this team. So heading into Kansas City, I would probably say Mariota probably starts this week, but we'll track Jayden Daniels' status as the week goes on. But unfortunately, some devastating news here for the Washington Commanders as their number one pass rusher this year, Dorance Armstrong, who had 6 sacks on the year already through 7 weeks, is going to be out for the rest of the season with a quote-unquote significant knee injury, according to head coach Dan Quinn. Now, obviously, this is a pretty major blow to this group. He was the highest producing player on the defensive line, and he was probably your best defensive player this year. So to lose him for the season is absolutely devastating. It sucks for Dorance as well because he's trying to get a new contract here coming up, and this injury, this apparently significant knee injury that's going to keep him out for the rest of the year, it's going to create question marks for him. So he was having a really good season, 5.5 sacks, 7 TFLs. He was very disruptive. He was really good against the run as well. He was a big reason why the run defense at the beginning of the season was as good as it was, and the ability to control the line of scrimmage was as good as it was. But to lose him is a major, major blow to this Commanders front four, and this is now the 4th player now that's going to be eventually put on IR when it comes to defensive ends. And your 2 starting defensive ends coming into the season, Dorance Armstrong and Deatrich Wise, are now out for the remainder of the season. One of your rotational and backup guys, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, is also out, and then Drake Jackson, who he just added last week, is on IR, still coming back from the injury he suffered last year. So, you just don't have a whole lot left in the cupboard here. You got Jacob Martin, you got Von Miller, you got Frankie Louvu that I guess you can move over to the edge position. We'll talk about that later in the show. But Dan Quinn also talked about the possibility of adding somebody in free agency. Here would be the top names that I think the Commanders would probably consider, given the role that they would be asked to play. A bigger body type of defensive end. DeMarcus Walker certainly fits that bill. Carl Lawson fits that bill, former Dallas Cowboy. So keep him in mind. And then you got Jerry Hughes, who's like ancient, 37 years old. Casey Toohill, he's been here before, but he's not great. And then same thing with Cleveland Ferrell. If I had to pick one of these guys, I'd probably pick either Cleveland Ferrell because he is somebody that can come in immediately and he already knows the defense and he can help contribute. And he's, he started in this role for this defense last year. So, it's reasonable to expect that he could come in off the couch and give you at least a little something and a little bit of depth. But DeMarcus Walker's another name that intrigues me as a bigger body type of defensive end. But, honestly, guys, none of these options are too inspiring. But now we can shift our focus to the defense at large. And, even though, you are missing Dorance Armstrong now, even if you had Dorance Armstrong, big changes need to be made on this Commanders defense if things are going to be turned around, all right? I don't think it's just a scheme issue at this point. I think it's very much a personnel issue, and there's certain players on this defense that, frankly, should not be out there that are getting every down roles. And, frankly, this defense has been just absolutely awful to start this season. You guys can take a look at where the Commanders rank on defense when it comes to all these different categories. And you guys can see the down-to-down efficiency is just not very good. 28th in yards per game allowed, 28th in yards per play allowed, 24th in EPA per play allowed. They're giving up the 21st most points per game at 24.3. Now, some of the situational stuff, third down, red zone, they're around league average, but they just don't take the football away either, man. They're just not very disruptive in terms of, getting those turnovers, and, they just need to create more of them in the future to be able to really elevate this unit moving forward. They honestly didn't take the ball away that much either, and that's been a big bug of Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr.'s defense here in Washington these first 2 years. So in terms of the concrete things that I think the Commanders can do this week to get better on defense, all right, the first thing that you got to do, in my opinion, is you get Marshon Lattimore off the field, and honestly, probably off the team, all right? I understand why they made the move for Lattimore. Back in his prime, he would have been perfect for this style of offense that they want to run here in Washington. He was one of the premier shutdown, number one, put him on an island, outside corners in the National Football League for many years, but injuries and age have caught up to him. He's not fast anymore, and, his aggressive style of play gets him in trouble a lot, all right? So right now, Lattimore is the 104th ranked corner in football, according to Pro Football Focus. That is a 44.0 grade. That's just not good enough, all right? Like, he's one of the lowest graded corners in the game. He's the lowest graded corner on the team, which is saying something, by the way. And he just doesn't bring any value to this defense. He really doesn't. And, I just don't think, because he doesn't have any guaranteed money left on his deal, I don't think this team should give him another dime. I don't think they should give him another paycheck. All right. Like, send him on his way. I think, you have to really embrace a youth movement here in Washington moving forward. Try to get younger, try to get faster, see what you have in these younger players. And Lattimore is just not going to be a part of the long-term future here in Washington. And I think you have to start expediting that process after a really bad start to the year. Then we get to Mike Sainristil, and that's who I would replace Marshon Lattimore with on the outside. All right. And, I think that this can maybe be an addition by subtraction as well, because Sainristil has been playing in the slot more this year, which is the position he was drafted to play. The vision for him was that he was going to be like a Brian Branch type of kind of nickel defender and be an impact player in the middle of the defense. But frankly, he didn't start his rookie season out too well when he was playing in the slot, and then he played a lot better, actually, when they asked him to play on the outside. And then this year, they've moved him back into the slot, and he's, once again, not been very good. He's got a 53.2 grade this year, which is 86th out of 110 corners, according to Pro Football Focus right now. And last year, and it's not like he was, amazing or anything like that. He didn't crack the top 50 in PFF grading among corners with a 65.8, but it was certainly serviceable, and it was certainly good enough to have a lot of faith and hope in this second-year player heading into year two. But he has taken a step backwards, and he has regressed now that they have taken him away from that starting outside cornerback position. And honestly, I think at this point, the best hope for Mikey as a player is that he's a decent number two outside corner. Now, I really don't think he's ever going to be a shutdown number one guy, just because I don't think he's got the length. I don't think he's got the long speed. He has to kind of play in an off-zone type of system, and he has to keep his eyes on the quarterback and kind of play with instincts in that way. He still has good instincts, and somewhat good instincts, I should say, and he can still play in that way on the outside. And we saw him play some decent football last year on the outside. So my hope is you can move him out there. Get rid of Lattimore, see what you have in Sainristil on the outside, because I think it's become pretty clear Mike Sainristil is not a very good nickel corner in this league. And honestly, I'm okay with Mike Sainristil being a number 2 caliber corner because it's looking to me like Trey Amos is going to be a number 1 in this league. He's got long arms. He plays with awesome technique. He has been by far and away the best starting corner for the Washington Commanders this year. And I expect that to continue into future years. So hopefully you do have your starting outside cornerback duo of the future in-house right now, but you're not going to figure that out about Sainristil unless you put him on the outside, right? In terms of who replaces Sainristil in the slot, I would say play Jonathan Jones. That would be my preference there, but obviously you still have Noah Igbenogany in the building. He started at slot corner for this team last year when this defense was playing better. So maybe you can think about putting Igbenogany in there. But Jonathan Jones, they gave him a contract this offseason, and the kind of thinking was, if there was somebody that wasn't up to snuff or got injured, he could come in and play either outside or inside. And I think that opportunity has now presented itself. He just got placed off of IR last week, and with Lattimore just looking like he doesn't have any long-term future here in Washington, I would let him go, put Sainristil on the outside, and put Jonathan Jones there. And then, okay, if Jonathan Jones stinks in the slot, and frankly, Jones before his injury was not looking very good, okay, we can put Igbenogany back in there as a Band-Aid for the rest of this season. But another option in the slot that you could do is you could go to a big nickel kind of base defense here and bring in C.J. Gardner-Johnson to play that big nickel spot. All right, now is it possible that C.J. doesn't even want to come play for Washington because they're 3-4 and things aren't looking too great in terms of the grand scheme of the season? Possibly, but it sounds like he wants a place to play, and if I'm the Washington Commanders, I'd be offering him a starting job on my defense right now as the big nickel. He can play in the slot. He's a decent coverage player, and he brings a level of physicality that, frankly, this Commanders defense desperately needs, especially from that slot cornerback position, all right? And you look at some of the more modern defenses in the National Football League, all right? Jalen Ramsey with the Pittsburgh Steelers, Kyle Hamilton with the Baltimore Ravens, Derwin James with the Los Angeles Chargers. He plays big nickel for them. Big nickel is really the future of NFL defenses, and I think that the Commanders need to really embrace that. And you just so happen to have one of the better big nickel type of players available on the open market right now, and you can probably get them for the vet minimum. I mean, I just think it's just a no-brainer move here where if you're not going to go with Jonathan Jones and you're not going to go with Noah Igbenogany, you don't have confidence in those guys, go get a big nickel here that can play strong safety, that can play in the box, that can play in the slot, and do a bunch of different things for your defense. All right, so I think C.J. Gardner-Johnson would be a hell of a pickup. If I'm the Commanders, I'm picking up the phone and signing him this week. So coming up here on the Commanders Report, another veteran starter that should be benched, in my opinion, moving forward here in the 2025 campaign. But before we get into the rest of today's Commanders Report show, you and I make decisions every single day, but on PrizePicks, being right can actually get you paid. That is, if you know ball. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. Football season is finally here, and you better believe I'll be getting my PrizePicks lineups in all season long. PrizePicks is super simple to play. Just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in. PrizePicks also puts their users first, so while withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure, PrizePicks also offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. And a new feature from PrizePicks that I absolutely love is injury reboots. If one of your players leaves the game in the first half and does not return, PrizePicks won't count it as a loss. So for Monday Night Football tonight, I'm going to take the more on Jackson Smith and Jigba rushing or receiving touchdown. I'm going to take the more on passing yards for Baker Mayfield and the more on rushing yards for Nick Chubb. Download the app today. Use code CLNS. Get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup on the PrizePicks app today. That's code CLNS. Get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Speaking of older veterans that should be taken off the field for the Commanders defense at this point, and in the embrace of a youth movement, I think it's time to take Bobby Wagner off the field and start a transition to start getting either Jordan McGee, Ali Cahoe, somebody ready to take on the green dot responsibilities in the future, because that's what's coming in the future. Plain and simply, guys, this is going to be Bobby Wagner's final year in the National Football League, probably, because he's just not playing to Bobby Wagner's standards, and he just can't move anymore. I mean, his athleticism has been declining for many years now, and last year, it was just enough to be able to be serviceable and be pretty good in run defense, especially between the tackles, be a good blitzer, a great communicator, one of the most smartest hardest players in the league. All that stuff is still there, but this year it's taken another step back where, like, if it's an off-tackle run, he cannot get sideline to sideline fast enough according to NFL standards, all right? Like, he's just not getting to where he needs to go and to his landmarks quick enough in the outside run game, which is why you're seeing a ton of outside runs be super successful against the Commanders defense right now. And then in pass coverage, whether it's man, whether it's zone, he just can't change directions. He can't run fast. He can't do any of the things that he used to be able to do, and he just looks lost out there, and he's getting completely exposed in pass coverage week after week after week after week. And it's just time for it to end. All right, put him out of his misery. I don't know if that means him retiring. I don't know if that means cutting him and seeing, if he retires after that. I don't know if that means keeping him on the roster as a team captain, but as a backup. I don't know exactly what that means. All I know is you got to get Bobby Wagner off the field way more than the every down role he currently possesses in this defense. And speaking of linebackers that need a change of role, especially with the Dorance Armstrong injury, guys, I would just move Frankie Louvu to edge full time. All right, like in terms of the linebacker stuff that Frankie Louvu is asked to do, play and pass coverage, make tackles out in space. Those are two things that Frankie Louvu, frankly, isn't very good at. All right, but what is he really good at? He's really good at blitzing. He's really good at rushing the passer. He can, he's very disruptive, and he can get into the backfield, and he's really good as a QB spy and as a cleanup player. So my suggestion to the Commanders' defensive coaching staff is just make him do that full-time, all right? Make him a full-time edge rusher. If you're going to use him in a quote-unquote inside linebacker type of role, use him as a spy, as a cleanup player, that sort of thing, because he's just not good in coverage. He looks lost out there, and then in terms of tackling out in space, like, he just can't do it anymore. So I would just lean into what Frankie Louvu does well as a player at this point. He made a couple nice plays yesterday as a pass rusher after Dorance Armstrong went down with his injury. So I think that, if you're looking for a Dorance Armstrong replacement, I would look right to Frankie Louvu. But obviously, if you're going to bench Bobby Wagner and you're going to be moving Frankie Louvu to edge full-time, that means there's two vacancies, not just one, but two vacancies at inside linebacker. So the two guys that I would play are Jordan McGee and Ollie Cahill. Okay, those are the guys, the young players, extremely fast linebackers that I would put out there. And if you're looking to stop the off-tackle runs, if you're looking to stop the toss plays on the outside, and you want guys that can go sideline to sideline and make some tackles out in space, Jordan McGee made multiple open field tackles yesterday. He looked as good as any Commanders linebackers looked all year in terms of run defense, in terms of tackling, in terms of, and he's not even known as like run defense specialist. He came out of Temple as a quote-unquote undersized, very athletic type of pass coverage linebacker, but he also brings excellent speed to the table, and now it looks like he might be the most reliable tackler in the linebacker room for the Washington Commanders, maybe outside of Bobby Wagner, but McGee can actually get to these running backs and these players faster because he runs a 4.55, right? So he's got really good speed for a linebacker. He's really good in coverage for a linebacker, and I have been calling for him to get more playing time for weeks at this point, and I think it's time to fully embrace it, give him the green dot, make him the every down player, because he's got an excellent athletic profile, and I think he should be given a shot to try and be a full-time starting linebacker in this Commanders defense moving forward. And then I would actually give the second starting nod here to Ali Cahill over Kane Medrano, because Cahill looked better than Medrano in this defense in the preseason. He made a lot of really good plays. He made our winners list on multiple games during the preseason. He looked pretty good, all right? So that's the guy that I would bring in. And, yeah, we're embracing a youth movement here in Washington according to my plan. You got two guys that are younger, haven't played a whole lot, but they're very athletic, and they've got some upside. And that's what I'm looking for right now. I want to find players that are fast, that can play in coverage, and can blitz, do all those things, and KO can certainly do that. He's another guy that runs really, really fast, even ran faster than Jordan McGee at 4.5, which is really, really freaking good. And he was a little bit bigger than McGee was coming out as well. So I really like these two guys. I think that they've shown some good stuff. Some other guys that you can consider are Kane Medrano, who they did spend a draft pick on, also very athletic. And then Tyler Owens as well, who's technically a safety, but he's like as big as a linebacker. So you could think about putting Tyler Owens in there, but probably not. I don't think this defensive coaching staff, frankly, trusts him to do the linebacker type of stuff in this defense. But for me, I would go with Jordan McGee and Ali Cahoe as the starting linebackers in this defense moving forward. And then another thing that I would do here is I would take Quan Martin off the field at free safety, and I would play Percy Butler. And I can't believe I'm saying this, guys, because Percy Butler was literally the lowest graded safety in the National Football League last year. But, man, Quan Martin has been that bad this season, all right? He's not good in coverage. He's had some really bad tackling lapses as well. Obviously, you spent a high draft pick on him a couple of years ago in the Ron Rivera era and, had a slow start, bounced back last year, had a decent season, and now he's fully reverted back. And I don't know if we've ever seen him play this bad. So I hope he turns it around if they keep playing him. But right now he's got that 50.9 PFF grade, which is currently ranking 72nd in the league out of 83 safeties. So I'm starting to lose faith in Quan Martin here. It's year 3, and he's looking this bad. I would at least see what I have in Percy Butler because, Percy, even though he hasn't been on the field on defense all that much, he's made some really, instinctual and nice plays on special teams. And I want to see if he can translate some of that to the Commanders' defense at free safety. So who should start? Let me know down there in the comment section. Are you benching Quan Martin for Percy Butler, type PB, or are you sticking with number 20, type QM, if you're sticking with Quan? Now, you might be saying at home, but Jack, should they fire defensive coordinator Joe Witt Jr.? And for me, I didn't include a firing of the defensive coordinator here, at least for now, all right? I think that I'm going to stick with Joe Witt Jr. at least for a couple more weeks because I want to see if a personnel shakeup, can really ignite a fire under Joe Witt Jr.'s ass and frankly just get this scheme to be executed better because right now, frankly, I'm not sure if the issues are all scheme. Like there's some scheme issues. There's calling way too much soft zone and kind of third and long situations, and the execution has been terrible. But also part of that is I just don't think the right players are on the field. All right, you put some younger players out there, you put some more speed out there to hopefully be a little bit more competitive, and then I think we can get a little bit more of a better evaluation of Joe Witt Jr. before we just go ahead and fire him right now. So that's kind of my thinking on that is I don't think that, the scheme would like drastically change if Joe Witt Jr. gets fired either. It's still going to be Dan Quinn's, 4-2 kind of base defense, stuff like that. So I think that what they should do here, based on my plan with Samer still playing on the outside, Cahoe and McGee playing linebacker, Luvu playing edge rusher, I would play the 4-2 nickel-based defense that they want to run with Dan Quinn, so nothing changes there. But I would probably play a lot of heavy off-coverage zone, but I would lean into post-snap rotations within those zones to keep quarterbacks kind of guessing, and then I would throw a lot of creative blitz looks at the line of scrimmage. I would walk up people to the line of scrimmage. Safeties, if you can get C.J. Gardner-Johnson, walk his big ass up there as well. All right, like get quarterbacks thinking you're sending the house, and then you can go out into a bunch of different stuff, quarters, palms. You can go into Tampa 2, just confuse opposing quarterbacks, all right? Don't just sit back there and just take it, all right? Like have some fight here, have some pride in what you're trying to build here in Washington. And, if these changes that they implement do that, great. If they don't and this defense still stinks, then I think the discussion to fire Joe Witt Jr. probably at the end of the season is probably one that I will seriously consider. But before I go here, guys, I do have some more takeaways from the film. Some standouts, just some general notes after watching the film here today that I wanted to share with you guys. And we'll start here with a couple of standout players in the defensive trenches, okay? And the first one's Daron Payne. Played sick yesterday, and he was sensational. He had that tackle to get the safety early on in the game. He had multiple batted passes. He had a quarterback hit, and of course he had that TFL that ended up being the safety, but he was all over the place, man. He was controlling the line of scrimmage. He was enforcing his will. He has been phenomenal all throughout this season, frankly, and he's certainly heading towards another big payday with the way that he's playing right now. But also, Jacob Martin stepped up this week. All right, I thought it was a really bad game for him against Chicago. Out of position, looked slow, etc. But in this game, he took the fight to Dak Prescott. All right, he got into the backfield multiple times. He had 3 quarterback hits and a half sack. He was bringing some of the juice, which is something that was kind of lacking from this Commanders defense, especially as of late. So I certainly think Jacob Martin could be part of the solution up front for the Washington Commanders. But then, something that was not good on the defensive trench this week, and frankly it was versus Chicago as well, Preston Smith is unplayable, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I don't know if you can release him because I don't think you have the depth to be able to release him. But, this is part of the reason why I want to move Frankie Louvu to defensive end, is because you can have Louvu, Jacob Martin, and Von Miller. Those should be the three guys that are getting snaps at defensive end for the Washington Commanders. And only in an emergency, like in the case of another injury, should Preston Smith be out there because he's slow. He's not doing his job correctly, and it just doesn't look good on film, guys. Then Jeremy Reaves. As much as I love the guy, he's a phenomenal special teamer. He's a great locker room guy. He's not a starting defensive player in this league, unfortunately. Sometimes he'll make a really great tackle, and his aggressiveness, I love watching him on tape, but he's out of position way too much. And it's just not starter quality ball. So unfortunately, I think that you should probably stick with Darnell Savage at strong safety, and not even Savage has been perfect. He made a really, really bad tackle attempt on that long long run from Javonte Williams on that drive before the end of the first half yesterday. That was really bad, but at least Savage made some plays on the football, and he's been around the football these first 2 weeks that he's been on the field. But then also, shifting over to the offensive side of the ball, there's just no push in the run blocking unit whatsoever. Bill Krosky-Merritt and Jerry McNichols and these guys are kind of, I think, taking advantage of all the things that they can. I think the vision looks fine. It's not like they're missing open holes or anything like that. It's just the offensive line has been losing the line of scrimmage the last 2 weeks. And last week versus Dallas here yesterday, the Commanders running backs only had 67 yards of rushing, which was just not very good. They averaged 3.5 yards per carry or something like that. It was just an inefficient day from Bill Krosky-Merritt and the running backs, but I don't put it on the backs. I put it on the offensive line for not being able to force their will, and frankly, what is a pretty squishy defensive line in front seven for the Dallas Cowboys. So I think this offensive line may have been exposed the last 2 weeks. You've gone up against two of some of the worst run defending teams in the National Football League the last 2 weeks, and your offensive line has been bullied 2 weeks in a row. And, if this is going to be a team that's going to be predicated on the run game this year, which it probably is going to have to be if you're going to bounce back and start winning a lot of games down the stretch, you got to have your offensive line, play better than what they have the last 2 weeks. And I'm scared that they won't. Then we get to some specifics on the offensive line here, which is that it was a rough game for Josh Connerly Jr., guys. And frankly, he's had a pretty rough rookie season. And at this point, I might even think about putting Andrew Wiley at right tackle. And I can't believe I'm saying that because I advocated for this team to replace Andrew Wiley at right tackle multiple times throughout my time as the host of this show. But Josh Connerly Jr., man, he was a walking mistake versus the Dallas Cowboys. Multiple penalties, multiple pressures, multiple sacks given up. And it just wasn't good. And, if you're going up against Sam Williams, if you're going up against, Dante Fowler Jr. is a decent player, but it was just disappointing because I think Connerly has put some good tape out there this year. I don't think he's completely a lost cause. But this team is trying to make a quick turnaround, and Connerly was supposed to be the pro-ready guy that was going to come in and be a good starter right away. And, I think the simple reality of the matter is, at least yesterday, he wasn't. Then we get to Sam Cosmi, who had his first game action of the year. I thought he was back to business, man, even though the offensive line as a whole wasn't, getting much push or anything like that. I thought Cosmi was pretty good in pass protection. I think he was okay in run defense. But, I'm certainly looking for him to take some steps forward the more he plays this season. It was really week one for him, but for that kind of quote-unquote week one performance, I thought he played pretty darn well. My final note here is that Robbie Chosen still has a bit left in the tank here, guys. He actually had some pretty nice stuff, all right? He was getting thrown the football because he was getting open, all right? He was getting one-on-one man coverage, and he was the guy, frankly, that was really getting open a majority on those looks. And there was a play down the field where they throw it up to him. Clear pass interference, not called, by the way, but he got open and toasted his guy down the sideline. He was getting open on comeback routes. He was doing a lot of good stuff for this Commanders offense yesterday, and he's still got the legs, all right? He might be older, past his prime, whatever, past his 30s, but, he hasn't lost his legs, and he can still move. He can still stop on a dime. He can still run some pretty decent routes, all right? I'm really excited to see what Robbie Chosen's going to give us on Monday Night Football versus Kansas City. And if Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel, and, we already know Noah Brown's not going to be able to be out there, But Robbie Chosen, I think, is going to get some opportunities to play on Monday night, and I'm excited to see what he can do with those opportunities this week. Let me know down there in the comments section, was the percent chance that the Commanders make the playoffs this year? Are you in the 0 category? Do you think the season's over? Put it on a scale of 0, meaning no chance, to 100, meaning they're definitely going. For me, I'm probably at somewhere in between 15 and 25%. It's pretty down in the dumps right now, and there's going to have to be some major changes made that, frankly, I don't know if I trust this Commanders coaching staff to make in the weeks to come, at least not in time. But let me know your answer down there in the comments section. And then also finish up today's show by going down there in the comments section. We want to show you guys some love for making it to the end of today's show, because it was a little bit of a longer video, so we want to show you guys some love for making it to the end. So type real one down there in the comment section in all caps if you made it to the end of the show. And if you do so, we'll give you some love down there in the comments section. And that'll be it for today's edition of the Commanders Report by Chat Sports. Like I said, man, lots to talk about today. We're going to have even more to talk about tomorrow. So make sure you click that subscribe button for in-depth Commanders coverage every single day all throughout the year.